Stop the insanity. Get your focus back onto what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Sit back, listen, and change the trajectory of your life. You are listening to the Money for Life podcast. Let's welcome your hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick Sapio with my partner, Teresa Kuhn. And Teresa, I can't believe it. This is the 55th podcast that we've recorded together on our way to 500. So we're a little bit more than 10% of the way there. We want to have a body of work that people can tap in for 15 minutes anytime they want to learn how to improve in faith, family, finance, and future. And finance and future embodied in that is business. And embodied in business is how to build a team. So the title of this podcast is Building a Team by Strengths and Weaknesses. And you might think, well, how is that? What does that mean? And what we've observed is oftentimes entrepreneurs start a business, they try to hire a lot of people like them, and it makes the road much more difficult. So Teresa, at a high level, what does it mean to build a team by strengths and weaknesses to you?
Most of the time, people build teams by default. They're referred to somebody or they're interviewing and a candidate looks interesting or a candidate seems to check all the boxes for what they need or what they want. But they're not hiring by design. They're not hiring by weaknesses and strengths. And so what I mean by that, or what that means to me is, and I could take it very, very personal, I am super good at a few things. I've got some amazing strengths, but I have a ton of weaknesses. It's how I'm wired, and I have no ego around that. It is just the way I am. When I was younger, I did have insecurities about my weaknesses because they were just so apparent. And if you spent time around me, my friends used to tease me all the time about my weaknesses. And now I don't care, because I learned at a deep level for myself when I started doing a lot of personality tests and just really getting to know myself. I learned that my strengths were my superpowers, and the superpowers that I had were very, very unique. And what I brought to the table, what I brought to a team, what I brought to a client, what I brought to a partner was so powerful in terms of that strength that who cares that I wasn't good at a bunch of other stuff.
So Teresa, you're speaking in terms of, strengths and weaknesses and superpowers. And for the sake of the audience, tell me what a weakness that you have identified that you possess, so they understand when they're building a team, you want to hire somebody that's really good at your weakness. I'm not sure if that point is being made clear enough. So give us an example of one of your weaknesses that you look to hire for.
Details and follow-up. My clients and people around me think my follow-up is amazing. But it's not me that follows up. I've got a team around me that have a strength of following up. What I have that helps me with my follow-up, even though, again, it's a weakness of mine, is my word. If I give somebody my word, I need to follow up. So that stress, when I make a commitment and having to follow up, made me have people around me that I can depend on to do the follow-up for me.
Okay, so follow-up was a weakness. What's another weakness that you had to hire for because you didn't have it?
Anything to do with paperwork or applications or filling in the blanks. I am awful at all of that. And so I've got people who love paperwork, love spreadsheets, love filling in all those details. That is not my strength. In fact, I look at that, and this goes back to my days of practicing law. And with law, there's a lot of paper. I was really good at a couple things when I practiced law. I was really bad with all of that paperwork. And I had an associate, a colleague that I worked with, and we had strengths and weaknesses. And so I helped him with the stuff that he was not so good at, and he helped me with my weakness.
Awesome. All right, now, just so the audience can get an example, so they can start thinking about it for themselves, and I'm going to give some examples personally as well. What is a superpower that you possess?
People trust me. I come across as trustworthy. That's a very huge strength that I can leverage to make connections and to make things happen. I'm also a big picture thinker. I'm a visionary. So I can see the future, and I call them sometimes my hallucination. It's my ideas, and I can see the future and I can make stuff happen. I can put a force and energy behind that idea to manifest it. And manifestation is a word that's used a lot today. And, I'm using it not in the woo-woo sense. I'm just using it as this is the vision. This is the objective. How do I get there? I can make that happen. This is a message from our sponsor, the 100-Year Savings Solution. Rick and I do these podcasts because we want to impact people's lives in 4 areas: their faith, their family, their finances, and their future. And with the 100-Year Savings Solution, it gives you more options to live a better life in those 4 areas. It is a specially designed whole life insurance policy that gives you more for your money than you'll ever get from a bank, a CD, or the traditional savings solution. Go to 100yearsavings.com to learn more.
So for the sake of the audience, if you're like Teresa, you want to make sure that the bulk of your day is spent on things associated with putting yourself in positions where people can trust you and where you can explore your vision, and having people behind you worry about the details or worry about the follow-up. And all too often in life, companies are built on teams of people that do the exact opposite. They could be visionaries, they could hate detail work, and yet the bulk of their day is spent on detail work. And I call this Superman or Superwoman syndrome, where the leaders of a business or the founders of a business think that all roads lead to them, that they have to do all the work, that they have to do both the detail work and the visionary work and everything in between. And those type of people tend to hire just like them. And so the company gets stuck in muck. And when you think about companies that scale and grow, one example is an entrepreneur named Sarah Blakey started a company called Spanx. She's worth over $2 billion, they say right now, and she's relatively young. And she has a quote. She says, as soon as you can afford to hire weaknesses, what you're not good at is usually what you don't like. Sarah Blakey. Another one is by Ryan Kahn. He said, master your strengths and outsource your weaknesses. These are such simple quotes, and so few people do this. And that's why I often say in business, treat the company like a separate entity. Companies have their own federal tax ID number because they're separate from you as a person, but all too often, entrepreneurs treat the company as this is me, this is mine, my name's on the door, and it's very hard to scale a company like that. So for me personally, even at the age of 57, I don't like to delegate as much as I should. And so I find myself often in situations where I'm doing things that are completely against my strengths, things like accounting, things like financial analysis. I'm good at them, but it's a complete waste of time with somebody like me who is more of a CEO fixer. I love going into big companies and turning them around by making very quick decisions, restructuring leases, restructuring employees, restructuring product lines, restructuring bank accounts, things like that, restructuring debt. And when you do things like that, it requires intense focus for short spurts of time, like 3 months. Well, if I'm supposed to be doing that because that's what I'm built for, but instead of doing that, I'm doing detailed accounting work where I'm counting receipts, or email where I'm grinding through email for 5 hours a day, it's a complete and total waste of resources. And so I think all of us need to look at, as an example, the NFL. I think it's an overused metaphor, but if you have an NFL team and you're the coach, your goal is to find the best quarterback and the best running back and the best defensive end and the best in every one of those positions. And it's a perfect metaphor for business. Businesses should have crystal clear roles and find the best person for that role that will unify a team of people that all have their own strengths and weaknesses.
Rick, I think that's a fantastic metaphor, and I don't think it's overly used. If you think about, a football coach, is he going to hire 3 mediocre quarterbacks to win the Super Bowl? Of course not. He needs the absolute best in every role. So why don't we do that when we build our teams? Why don't we look for the best operations manager? Why aren't we looking for the best customer service person? Why aren't we looking for the best sales manager and then the best salesmen? salespeople. Just look at sales for a moment. If you are a great sales manager, you might not be the best salesperson. Most salespeople cannot manage, cannot recruit, cannot hire. They love sales. And what does a typical salesperson do as they're moving up in their career? They think the next career move is to become a sales manager. And you know what? Many of them become mediocre sales managers because their strengths are in selling, not in managing other salespeople. And in fact, they tend to then hate salespeople because they can't stand managing them, because they can't stand managing themselves. Salespeople love to fly, drop down for a sale, and go back up and sell again, right? They get their adrenaline hit with selling. The sales manager skill set's completely different. So what do companies tend to do, Rick? They tend to take their best salespeople and give them a promotion to sales management. Huge mistake.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of things like this, like the Peter principle, where people tend to get promoted past their level of competence. It's interesting that people don't realize, because they don't take the conscious effort to decide, what are my strengths? They don't realize that it's an important exercise. So as a takeaway to this podcast, take the time. It could be 10 minutes, it could be a week. Write down every strength that you have. And you could even characterize the strong ones as superpowers. I like how you said that, Teresa. And then what are your weaknesses? And how can you delegate out your weaknesses? I love the exercise that Bill Gates did early in his career. At the end of every day at Microsoft, he wrote down all the activities he did that he needs to delegate to someone else because he only wanted to focus on high-level strategy. And it seemed to have worked for him at Microsoft.
So Rick, there's an exercise that's been around for a long time, is document everything you do in 5-minute increments. And at the end of the day, the end of the week, you're looking at a bunch of stuff that you're doing and just looking at it saying, that drains my energy. I loved when I'm doing that. That gives you a clue as to what your strengths and weaknesses are. I also love personality tests. I've taken probably everyone out there because I went into this phase of I really wanted to understand myself. And one of my favorite tests, and it's probably because I understand how the test works, is Colby. And so I put all my employees and all my potential candidates for hire through the Colby test. Do you have any favorite personality skill assessment tests that you prefer?
One of the oldest and most used of these personality tests, which works perfectly, is the Enneagram. You could also use Strength Finders, that was originally founded inside the Gallup poll organization, to find out what your strengths are. And by doing that, you could also see last on the list, which is your weaknesses. But there's literally hundreds of different ones. All of them will produce the same result. It'll help you understand your strengths and your weaknesses. So thank you for listening to another episode of Money for Life. This is Rick Zappio and Teresa Kuhn signing off.
You have just experienced Money for Life. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. Have a blessed day.